Welcome back to my channel. My name's Michael, and thank you for everyone that commented on my first video. I was pretty happy with the way the video turned out. I really liked the format, and I'm definitely going to stick to it, I think, for now, and just see how that goes. With my first video, I was really talking about some of my recent favourites from the first half of the year. In this video, I'm just going to talk about some of my more recent reads, mainly the stuff that I enjoyed. The stuff that was pretty generic or pretty ordinary, I'm not really going to spend much time talking about it because I really don't see the need or the point of talking about stuff that was just average. And who needs to promote books that I didn't really enjoy? I will be talking about books that I don't enjoy in the future. I will be mentioning things like Pretty Things. I mentioned in my last video I was reading, it was pretty average, not for me. So I have finished that, but I won't talk about that as part of my recent reads because I don't see the point. As I said, I will mention books as I'm reading them and talk about my impressions of them at the time. But if they do turn out to be ordinary, then I'm not going to spend much more time than just saying that I was reading them in that video. Thank you for everyone that has commented on my first video. I really appreciated all the support that I got, and it's the best part of BookTube is getting those comments, and I think I had some great conversations with a lot of the people that I love on BookTube, and I look forward to having more conversations in the future. First of all, I need to address something that I didn't pick up in editing. It was only my wife that addressed it. This book, The Years, is by Annie Ernox, and I was saying Anne Enright, which is a completely different author. And I really didn't pick that up. I realized I was saying Anne instead of Annie, but I didn't realize I was saying a completely different author. So this is Annie Ernox, and this book is amazing. But I wanted to correct it because when I'm doing a video, I get a little nervous. So I make these mistakes, and I didn't realize it. I didn't pick it up in editing, so I couldn't correct it then, which is a shame. But pronunciations of names can be difficult, especially if you're reading a lot of books by translated authors. So I'm going to make some mistakes, but that was embarrassing, and I wanted to address that first. The first book I want to talk about is my lesbian experience with loneliness, and this is a manga, but I'm not really into manga, so let's just call it a graphic memoir. This just comes from Japan, and this was written and illustrated by Kabi Nagata, and this was translated by Jocelyne Allen. And I really love this memoir. It really deals with a lot of the internal, and I think the graphic memoir really works well for just going through the internal monologue and having the images depict what's happening as her inner thoughts are just going through a range of different emotions. And I think there's a lot in this manga to unpack. I think there's something about it that really blew me away. It deals a lot with her anxiety, her communication skills, her social interactions, her feeling of neglect and loneliness, her relationship with her parents, the lack of sex education, and so much. There's just so much going on, and it's trying to list them all. I could be here for ages. And I think that's what really made this book interesting, is because we are exploring a queer character who's having their first experience, like having their first lesbian experience, realizing that sex is really about communication, and then relationships, obviously communication is a key, and realizing that she has a real inability to communicate with others and trying to learn from that and grow from that. And it probably not the best book for me to review as a straight white man, but I really appreciate the amount of detail and the honesty that went into this. And I think that was such an amazing experience. And I definitely want to read the second book in this series. I don't know if there's more than two, but unfortunately I can't get a copy of it. I might have to order it online. But I just think it was definitely worth reading and well worth other people checking out. So I'm not really a manga person. I don't read that many graphic novels, but I kind of like the graphic memoir as a genre. I think it's an interesting way to explore the inner thoughts and what's going on in the head while you can draw out what's happening as an external, and I think it works really well as a graphic memoir. I mentioned I was reading Lie to Me by Philippe Besson, and this was translated by Molly Ringwald. And this just turned out just as I expected, basically a French version of Call Me By Your Name. It was very atmospheric, it was very well written, but for me, like, the character Philip was kind of boring. Like, the relationship he had with Thomas was played out in like the first chapter, and that chapter was about half the book, and then their separation, and he went on with his life. But I think Thomas was a far more interesting character. I would have liked to stayed with him instead, because he went on to marry a woman, and he must have wrestled with a lot of conflicting feelings, because it did feel like he was marrying the woman because he thought it was the right thing to do, while he was definitely more interested in men. And there was a part in the book that I don't really like. It's only a small part, and it didn't really play much into the story, but when Philip found out that Thomas was married to a woman, he was shocked. He thought that Thomas was gay, and he was really perplexed by this idea that he would marry a woman. It's like bisexuality or pansexuality doesn't exist in this book, and I'm not sure if this plays into the real world a lot. But it seems weird that these queer characters are just ignoring this idea that someone could be attracted to more than one gender. Or it turned out the case that Thomas was probably gay. He's just following this idea of what he was expected to do rather than following his own sexuality. But I'm really concerned about this. I had other weird thoughts about this book that I probably won't share out loud because not really something I want to discuss. But I think the book was pleasant. It was interesting to read. It wasn't the best book. And because Molly Ringwald was the translator, I think that was going to be the reason this book's going to sell, not anything else. I don't think there's much more than using Molly Ringwald as a marketing strategy to this book. I guess it's just an average book, but worth exploring if you're interested in a nice queer story, I guess. The book I had to read for my in real life book club was The Island of Sea Women by Lisa C, and this is not translated. The only reason I feel like I'm reading non-translated books is because of my book club, and I normally hate it. I think the books I pick are normally pretty boring or uninteresting, and I was expected to hate this book. It explores this patriarchal society in Korea where the men stay home and look after the babies, or when they've got nothing to do, they just sit around and drink and talk. And the women go out collecting the food and doing the diving. The reason why I was prepared to really hate this book is because Lisa C looks like a very white woman, and I would much rather see a book about Korea done by a Korean, and that's something I've probably voiced a lot. But when another person from another culture tries to do a novel about a different culture, they often bring their own biases, and it often doesn't really work for me. So I was expecting to really dislike this book, but I think Lisa C did some really great research into the history of Korea, and this book does expand over the life of one person, and you see the changing from World War II, like the Japanese occupying the split of Korea into the two, and so much is happening in this book, and I think it was really well researched. Lisa C is 1/8 Chinese, which is not enough for me to give her a pass, but I think the research of this book is definitely enough for me to enjoy the book. I think because she spent so much time talking to the women from this culture and talking to other people and looking at research, she was able to pull this book off where most people don't. I'm not going to mention the times where a Dutch man wrote about a Moroccan woman or a German wrote about Japanese culture. Those are two books that I've read recently, and I really hated them for it. But I think this one was well worth checking out, even though it wasn't translated. So that's high praise for me, I guess, for a book not translated. The other book I read recently was Feebleminded by Ariana Harwicz, and this is translated by Annie McDermott and Caroline Orloff. And this is an Argentinian book. I really loved her first book, which was Die My Love. In Die My Love, Harwicz really explores the idea of postpartum depression or postpartum psychosis, and it was a really intense, raw, emotional book And I love the intensity of that book. I think it really was something I've never seen before. Just experiencing that intense emotion was what made me want to read this next book. And this book is more set around a mother-daughter relationship, sort of similar to Die My Love, but not so much. The back of the book kind of describes it as a Thelma and Louise if David Lynch wrote the ending. And the idea of the book is this mother-daughter relationship plays out throughout it in that same intense, raw, emotional style that you can expect from Harwicz, and kind of dealing with the way men interact with them and the way they are seen as sexual beings rather than a mother or anything else. And there's so much going on and so much to unpack in this book. And I love that about these. These are tiny little books. It took me one sitting to read it. But I don't know, I might have enjoyed this book more than I did Die My Love, which is saying a lot. And I think I'll read pretty much anything that Ariana Harwicz writes. And she calls this and Die My Love part of her Unreluctant trilogy, books about being in situations that she doesn't want to be in. And they're kind of an autobiographical exploration into that idea with motherhood and parenthood, being a parent and all that kind of thing, and feeling like you're trapped as an idea of a person rather than who you really are. And that's what really struck me about this book, and that's what's going to keep me reading more of her books. So I can't wait till the next one be written, and then obviously I have to wait for it to be translated. But Ariana Harwicz, definitely an author for me. Those are the books that I've read recently, and hopefully you find something that you're interested in. I'm still reading 2666 by Roberto Bolaño, and that's translated by Natasha Wimmer. And I'm about 200 pages into it. It's about 1,000 pages, so I'm still going to be talking about this book for a couple of weeks, I think. But I really love it. I love the style, and I definitely have to read more Roberto Bolaño. I'm also reading Notes of a Crocodile by Miaojin, translated by Huie. And what I really like about this, it's kind of like a cult classic, exploring this unnamed narrator. She's a lesbian, and the idea of queer people in this book, they're called crocodiles. It's like they're a different type of person. They're not humans. They're crocodiles dressed as humans, kind of like lizard people, I guess. And what she's exploring is basically this feeling of being an outsider, being a part of society and not belonging. And it's a really fascinating story just of these people, these queer people, struggling to feel that connection with the rest of the world, struggling to make connections with other people, and just trying to live their lives as best as possible in these circumstances. And this is a Taiwanese book. I believe Taiwan has same-sex marriage now, and I think they were one of the first Asian countries to do it. But unfortunately, this author suicided at 26, and the autobiographical nature of the book, you can see that pain come through, and you really feel for it. It's a really great book, but knowing that she killed herself just makes the emotions, the feelings that are going on in this book just far more intense. And I really enjoy the book. I really appreciate her honesty and the way it plays out. And I think it's a book worth reading just because, especially just to get a sense of how other people have struggled and how other people live their lives. The last book I'm reading, and I've only just started, so I won't talk too much about it, is The Tunnel by Ernesto Sabato, and this is translated by Margaret Sayers Peden. And this is an Argentinian classic. It's one of those books that I feel like I should have read ages ago, kind of like Cesar Era. I think this is a book that I've been wanting to read for far too long, and I've put it off for far too long, but I'm really excited to check it out. As you know, I love Argentinian literature, as evident by Feebleminded, and I think there is so much to explore in the literary scene there, and I probably could spend my entire year reading Argentinian literature and not get bored. But I'm really enjoying this. I can't really say much at the moment because I still haven't got that far through the book, but I think this is definitely going to be a book for me. So that's it for me. Those are the books that I've read recently. Those are the books I'm currently reading. Apart from that, I don't think I have much more to discuss. So I'll be back in a video maybe next week talking about my progress and things like that. So if you want to talk to me further, all links to social media are in the description below, and please leave a comment because that's the best way to interact. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.